Just a few years ago, the St. Joseph's Parish in the town of Plattsburgh was in decline and seeing fewer parishioners. And so it teamed up with other Catholic churches in the area, in Morrisonville, Cadyville, and Peru, to share resources. But St. Joseph's pastor, Father Scott Seymour, says he knew in his heart at the time that the church would find a new way to serve its parishioners and the greater community. And it has.
All are welcome, all belong.
And this past week, they celebrated that new mission that now, 4 years later, is flourishing, offering services to people in need in the community and beyond throughout Clinton County. After putting the church up for sale, Father Seymour says they realized they wanted to continue that long-standing mission of helping those in need.
It was hard for us to accept such low offers when so many of our parishioners spent much of their hard work and sacrifices in building up this church. Its beauty and its integrity was truly not found in its grandeur or its ornateness, but its beauty was found in its people.
The new services include a new and greatly expanded food pantry, a clothing shop, a soup kitchen that's feeding hundreds of people who drive up every week for free hot meals, and veteran services that include delivering hundreds of these food baskets to veterans in their homes. The former rectory next door to the church has been renovated by volunteers into transitional housing to help abuse victims, people who lose their homes to fire, and even offering a place to stay for asylum seekers or their families who get turned away or separated at the Canadian border.
We're talking about seeing a common need and working together to help meet the need. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for extending your heart and your hands to those in need.
And Father Scott Seymour joins us now along with Star Burke, who is the Outreach Program Coordinator overseeing many of the services now being offered through the former church. Welcome. It is good to see both of you.
It's good to be here.
What a nice dedication ceremony and celebration of St. Joseph's new mission to help the community.
It was a glorious day.
Yes, it could have been sold off, but that wasn't really the idea that you considered and pursued. You thought there could be a better use.
We had many options to sell, but it just didn't seem like the right way to go. People were offering money, but it seemed like enough to cover the good work that the people had done there for ages to build up that church. And I didn't want to sell them short. And that church was always there for the poor. And I thought, what greater use of a church if we can't have Mass, we can still serve the poor, which is the ministry of the church. So church comes to them in a different way, in a different extension through St. Alexander's, through this outreach to the poor and the different services that we provide. And that started many years ago with Brother Roland. And he was very sympathetic to the poor. Everybody knew to go to Brother Roland because he was always willing to help and was always giving food and clothing and money to people who were in need. He was a wonderful, wonderful instrument to the poor, and they started the first clothing store. People of the parish have been extremely generous in making sure that these ministries stay in operation.
And so this really carries on Father Roland's work then.
It does. Yep. It's changed. They used to do all of it outside under the basement of the church. Now it's moved to the halls and reutilization of the different buildings and cutting them up to use for different purposes.
These programs now, the soup kitchen, the thrift shop, the clothing shop, obviously have greatly expanded.
The food shelf is probably the most recent addition.
That's correct.
That went into effect. It's been just about a year.
Just during COVID, when the great need came above, that many people were looking for food and were struggling, and the money and people losing their jobs and all that stuff. That's when the need came about.
It's been in effect for a while, but in different forms.
Yep.
So about a year ago, though, we actually was when we finished construction on what was the garage. So the garage became actually the new food shelf with our partners, JCO. We became the first food choice pantry, which I had not really heard of a food choice pantry till I started talking with and working with JCO. Was a wonderful opportunity. Everything came together. And it's really nice that individuals are allowed to shop. So we do ask people to make an appointment, but the appointment is so that you have your own time in the pantry. There's no other people there. You know, there's a little less stigma associated. If you're an individual that suffers with some social anxieties, you don't have a lot of people around you. It's you and one of the staff that are taking you through and letting you choose. Our goal over the next little while, one of our future plans, because we have the commercial kitchen, is we're going to take some of those foods that aren't necessarily everyday foods that everyone uses and do samples. So people can actually try them to see, do they like them? And then we would have the recipe card available. We try to focus on a little bit more healthier eating and having those conversations about, you know, this is healthier, but if you don't like it, you don't like it. Mm-hmm. So it's fun.
What's the response been? Is there a real need?
There is a real need. On average, we currently serve through our food pantry, which includes our Veterans Feeding Veterans program. We serve approximately 650 individuals a month through the food shelf.
Really? And did that grow during COVID?
Yes, it was a steady increase during COVID. It kind of stabilized a little bit, but with the economy, we're seeing an uptake again.
And did those numbers surprise you?
Yes and no. We knew there was a need because of the issue with COVID and people losing their jobs. It's amazing sometimes we don't realize just how we live almost from paycheck to paycheck, and just losing one paycheck can make the people who have a pretty stable, middle of the road life almost become unstable in the poverty level. We realized real quickly that, some of the people going through our lines, you can't judge them by the cars they're driving because there's a different story behind it. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we realized really quickly, even with the soup kitchen, the great need in the children, watching people pull up with the kids in their wagons to pick up food from mm-hmm. the local area. It's humbling, but it's rewarding at the same time. It made our parish have a sense of mission and a sense of purpose, and it's a very active way for them to live out their faith. And it's been a powerful experience, and it's literally transformed our parishes. It's amazing what we can accomplish. Collaboration is really the key to meeting the needs of people that sometimes fall through the cracks of society.
And so St. Joseph's really is now extending beyond Treadwell's Mills to Peru, Morrisonville, Cadyville, the other parishes.
We extend through the whole county.
Really through all of Clinton County.
We've delivered food as far as Cherubusco and below Cadyville.
So well beyond.
Yeah.
The soup kitchen has a meal once a week, and you mentioned you're seeing hundreds of people turning out for that meal.
We do on average 325 meals every Thursday. I would say about 75 to 100 are probably delivered before we even start the cars that are lining up. Most weeks, unfortunately, even with 325, we started at 275 and then we upped to 3 and we upped it to 325, and there are still weeks where we don't have any left. The nice thing is, though, I think as a community, as a whole, we have our soup kitchen on Thursday. Trinity Church in the city has theirs on Thursday. So it's quite often if somebody is coming to us and we did run out, it's not uncommon for us to call Trinity and say, do you have? Yes, I've got some, and we can.
You can send them.
Send them down and vice versa. It really is amazing how everyone pulls together. St. Augustine's has their soup kitchen on Wednesday nights as well. So we have, I think there's a meal Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays right in the area.
When we were there for the dedication ceremony, you had boxes of food. Is that the Veterans Feeding Veterans program?
That is the Veterans Feeding Veterans program that is housed out of St. Joseph's. It's part of our food pantry as well.
What's been the response to that?
That is actually, we started a year ago in January, so we've been a year and a half. We started with 35 households. We've actually exceeded 325 at this point. We currently have about 265 to 275 that receive monthly food boxes. They are either veterans or widows of a veteran.
And we've started the community garden, which a lot of that food is used when it's harvested to be put in the food pantry so that people have fresh produce. And lots of parishioners sometimes will donate their produce.
And the Compassionate Care Program for seniors is a program that you're working on developing.
Correct.
That's correct.
And that will help seniors how?
The primary focus of the Compassionate Companions is to work to limit social isolation for seniors. There's a lot of different things. The community currently has an existing program through Office of the Aging and JCO called the Friendly Visitor Program, which is very similar in nature, and we're collaborating with them. We're going to work together to make sure the needs of the senior are met.
And we know senior isolation has been a concern. Did it get only worse during COVID?
Yes.
It did.
And the demand, as we can imagine, has probably grown.
It was difficult, especially for us who would normally go in and bring communion and visit people. It's even with our own Eucharistic ministers, extraordinary ministers that go out into the community, bring communion. They felt terrible about these folks that were stuck in their homes, except for a phone call. But a phone call doesn't replace physical presence or physical touch, or just having somebody in the home with them. And that was a big struggle for a lot of our people. And we're just starting to open those doors again with the COVID lessening a little bit and following more protocols to help keep people safe, because we certainly don't want to put anybody in a precarious situation, but we don't want to leave them isolated either. So it's a slow process, and with this Compassionate Companions, the realization that, there are fewer and fewer priests, fewer religious. We're relying more on the faithful of the parishes to actually help us to get out there and find what the need is, so that if they need to get to a doctor, do they just need somebody to visit, or whatever their need is, hopefully that Compassionate Companion can help us figure out that and start to meet their needs.
Also, volunteers have renovated the former St. Joseph's Rectory right next door, right next to the food pantry, and to the church, into short-term transitional housing to help the homeless, to help perhaps domestic violence victims, even asylum seekers. You folks have teamed up with Plattsburgh Cares, the group that's helping asylum seekers at the border. Now, if they get turned back, oftentimes Plattsburgh Cares has been assisting them because many times they spend almost all the money they have to get to the border, hoping to get into Canada. If they get sent back to the U.S., Plattsburgh Cares steps in to provide housing and food and perhaps assistance to get them back home or to friends or family. And so this might also be a possibility for asylum seekers as well.
Yes. There's really not any set parameter. It could be an immigrant that got turned away from the border and just needs a place to stay for a night or two. I can tell you from working with Plattsburgh Cares and working with the New York State Office of New Americans, you often see families, they've been through so much, they're already teetering on the brink, they're traumatized. And then to have something happen at the border where maybe a family gets separated and dad's over here and mom and the kids are over here, and it's overwhelming. Sometimes you just need a space to catch your breath.
It's really a group effort, has been a group effort. And because of the parishioners and these different organizations that exist within the parish, they've made it successful.
It truly has been a labor of love and invested by the entire community.
Star Burke, Father Scott Seymour, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate it.
We're glad to be here.